Ni hao. Hi, my name is Patrick, but you can call me 26. And what we're going to do today is we are going to find out just how good Chinese AI models are at programming, with regards to iOS, of course, right? So in the last video, we had a look at some Western models, that is ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude, and we gave them a series of tasks to program small apps in iOS, and we came to the conclusion that the very best model, much to my chagrin, is ChatGPT 4.1, right? It did better than all the others, a lot better than all the others, and in fact, for some reason, Claude wasn't able to even finish the last test, right? So that was the case. But what we want to do today is we want to have a look at Qwen, which is offered by Alibaba, and DeepSeek, and give it the exact same prompts and see the app that it's going to generate, right? Before we get to today's business, you could have a look at my course. That is the e-commerce full stack application. And what we build is iStore. And iStore, we build the front end and the back end. And iStore does use Swift data. We use Swift data in persisting our cart. So whenever you close the app, we save the contents of what you want to get into a cart. And in this cart, which also has a map, you can pick the location like so and do that. And this is persisted using Swift data. And also among our carts, we have favorites, right? So we have our favorites here, and you could save the favorites, and the favorites are products that you like that you would want to maybe go back and later on buy. And this also uses Swift data to save our particular favorites, right? So we do that. And also on top of it, we figure out how we can work with the observable macro when you're dealing with Swift data. So all these are projects that we actually implement in this application. If you'd like to see the complete project, have a look at the link in the description. If you're going to see the 26-hour project in its entirety plus the source code. If you would like to see the first 12 hours of the project, they're available on my page on this channel, right? So have a look at that. Now let's get to the business, right? So come to qwenlm.github.io to get access to Qwen, and then just let's hit Qwen chat, descend upon it, and we get this, and we want the most powerful model, so get the Qwen 2.5 max and paste this, right? So we want to create a Pomodoro Timer in SwiftUI, and we tell it that it should have the user should be able to change time periods in increments of 5. After each work period, you should get a 5 minutes rest period. The user should be able to pause and reset the timer, and everything should be managed through a manager that uses the observable macro, right? So we hit that, and we start thinking, and then we hit this to get it to work, and then afterwards we come back when it's done. We find that it has used observable object despite us telling it to use the observable macro, and even when you look at the thinking, it doesn't seem to know the difference here. Observable object, the manager uses the observable macro, which is observable object. It doesn't seem to know the difference between the two, and it clearly fails this, right? The other models that we tested previously in the other video did know the difference between an observable object and the observable macro, right? So this has failed, but let's just try again. It doesn't seem to know the difference between the two. I don't doubt whether the rest of this actually work, but let's just try and nudge it in the correct direction by telling it to do not use observable object, use the observable macro instead, right? So let's run it with that and see whether or not it can fix the errors. Okay, so it does fix the issues that it had, and this is what the code looks like. And if you hit start, it does seem to work. If we hit pause works, reset works. Let's see if we can, oh god, okay. When you try to decrement, let's just run it on the simulator just to be sure. It looks like we're having errors in the code, right? Give it a second. For some reason, when you try to decrement the time, it crashed. And let's try to increment it, right? Or let's wait for the, okay, there's an error that causes it to crash, right? Let's see. Okay, let's do this. And you can't seem to decrement or increment the time, right? So, and it doesn't seem to work anymore, right? So we can safely conclude that Qwen was not able to do the simplest test, right? Now, the next one we want to try out is DeepSeek, right? So we come paste the same prompt there, create a Pomodoro Timer in SwiftUI, etc, and try and run it, put deep thinking and DeepSeek R1, and see how it goes. Let's done it properly. as expected. Let's put the code to the test. Come here, put it here, right? It even uses an enum to keep track of whether it's working or resting, and so on and so forth. And it grades out the buttons. This is an excellent job if you ask me. Let us try reducing it first. 20, 15, 10, 5 minutes, right? And then grades this out. So let's start. Can you do 5? Okay, the time is ticking. Good. Pause, reset, right? Now the only issue I have with it, which is not really an issue if you ask me, is that the reset button looks permanently grayed out, right? So you can interact with the reset button, right? But it doesn't give the user the idea that it's usable, right? So all I need to do now is just test whether or not at the end of the timer it goes from work to the rest period, right? So let me test that and then we can continue. It seems to be working perfectly, and you can see the time transition. It does transition from work to break time, right? So it's working perfectly, right? And we can pause it and we can reset it, and when you reset it, it goes back to the previous time that you had actually set it, the previous block of time that you had set it to be. In our case, we had set it to 5, right? So it works really well. It works just as well as maybe Gemini and Claude that did the first time, and also, in fact, better than Claude, and also as good as ChatGPT 4.1. Okay, right? Let's do this. Right now, the next one is we are supposed to create a map with an annotation in the middle. The annotation should have a label of the actual place the map is on, and the user should be able to drag the annotation around the map. After the user is done dragging, that is, we should keep a sort of user state variable to keep track of the place the annotation is on, so that when it is moved to another location, the annotation appears, right? So that's basically it. I have made an exact video building this. This is fairly, I would say, this is fairly complex, right? So, and we also wanted to only use SwiftUI. I think you can only do this if you use at least iOS 17 to do this, right? So if you want to do it with less than iOS 17, I believe you might have to use UIKit. So I make it even harder by saying use only SwiftUI and not UIKit. So let's see how it does with this challenge. This is the code that was produced. If you have a look at it, pretty good if you ask me. It uses code from iOS 16 and stuff, because you can see that in particular the onChange modifier that was deprecated, right? So this was deprecated in 17 going forward, but it does work, right? It does it in a lot less code than I would do it, but it works perfectly, right? Now the ensuing map is a bit more jittery. Like if you come and drag this, you see it does stutter a bit, right? It does stutter a bit, but it does work. And the location is the label does change, right? So as you move it along, right? So this is by far the best implementation of what I suggested, right? So this is really, really good, and it's a lot better than 4.1. Gemini also balls it up and messed it up, right? This is the best implementation, right? So I can confidently say that for these two tests that we have, DeepSeek passed both of them, right? I would put this as a more or less as a pass, right? As compared to what ChatGPT 4.1 did, Claude wasn't able to do it, and Gemini did. Gemini ended up moving the map rather than the annotation like we're doing here, right? So this is pretty good, right? So for now, for those two tests that we did, we find that the best model is definitively DeepSeek R1. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.